Taking a look at the first reading from Kant's Grounding for the Metaphysics of Morals. This is the first section. We're skipping the preface and introduction. I'd like you to take a look at what it's actually called, which is transition from the ordinary rational knowledge of morality to the philosophical. I think one of the things you have to keep in mind when you're reading Kant is that he believes that he is starting with our common notion of what morality is. He's not building it up. He's analyzing it in the sense that he believes that we have an understanding about what morality is, certain things about it at least, and that all he's doing in this book is putting that common understanding on a firm philosophical basis. So essentially, he's not telling us anything that we don't already know. He's just sort of helping us to make it more explicit for ourselves. And he starts with the idea of the goodwill. Um, he says there is no possibility of thinking of anything at all in the world or even out of it which can be regarded as good without qualification except a goodwill. And that good without qualification is something that you should perhaps concentrate on. What does it mean for something to be good without qualification? Sorry. Something to be good without qualification, it would have to be intrinsically good. Good. Good in all situations, regardless of circumstance. Some things are good, generally good, but not always. You know. That's kind of his major point in the beginning is that there are other things that we definitely call good. Um, Courage, resolution, perseverance, just to name some virtues of character. And generally speaking, they're good, or they're even almost always good. But they're not always good, um, because there are situations in which those things can be put to evil ends. And then we think of the more commonplace goods, money, um, physical beauty. Um, these things are generally good, but there are situations in which they're also bad or can be used for bad. And there's only one thing that's not like that, he says, and that's a goodwill. Now, why would he focus on something like a goodwill? Uh, well, first of all, he's talking about the use of these different goods, and he says, but they can also become extremely bad and harmful if the will, which is to make use of these gifts of nature, is not good. So it's the will that sort of determines whether things are good. And yeah, I mean, right. The good will is intrinsically good, he says. And that's the bottom of page 7. He says a good will is good not because of what it affects, what it does, or accomplishes, nor because of its fitness to attain some proposed end. It is good only through its willing. That is, it is good in itself. What is he talking about? Well, I mean, uh, was the movie good? Well, if it was good, if it gave people enjoyment. Was the meal good? It was good if it gave people enjoyment. Is it a good tool? It's good if it gets the job done, right? That is, like lots of times in life, most of the time, we say that something is good according to what it does, what it accomplishes. Is it a good roof? Well, does it keep the rain out? Is it a good car? Well, does it run reliably? We think of things as being good according to what they accomplish, but Kant is saying that's not true when it comes to the goodwill. The goodwill is good, he says, wholly apart from what it accomplishes. It's good in itself. So again, what is he talking about? Well, I think we'll get a sense of of what he's getting at, but just to give you a kind of an idea, why is he talking about this? Well, he's already talked about the effects or accomplishments of an act. So let's talk about an act. Anything that somebody does. That act is produced by somebody's intention, right? Somebody intends to act, and then that act has some kind of result. If we're utilitarians, we determine the morality of an act by its results. We're consequentialists. But if we're Kantians, and Kant says that we're all Kantians, basically, we determine the moral value of an act by the intention behind it. And is an act a good act? It really depends upon why somebody did it. And if somebody did it from a good will, then it's a good act. And it doesn't matter what the result is. We'll be developing this idea, but he really is kind of working on a pre-existing idea we have about morality, that it's the thought that counts. That is, that whether somebody is doing something good doesn't really depend upon the results or consequences of the act. It depends upon the intention or will behind the act. We'll talk more about that. I think that's when he says that he's starting with the common notion of morality. I think that's one of the things that he's starting. The other idea here is the idea of reason. As he says, this is in the middle of page 8, but there is something so strange in this idea of the absolute value of a mere will, in which no account is taken of any useful results, that in spite of all the agreement received even from ordinary reason, yet there must arise a suspicion that such an idea may perhaps have its hidden basis merely in some high-flown fancy, and that we may have misunderstood the purpose of nature in assigning to reason the governing of our will. And what follows there is something quite interesting, which is an argument that human beings, well, they are rational creatures. There's no argument that they're rational creatures, but the argument is about why they're rational creatures, what reason is for. And his argument is that we can't have reason for happiness because we would be much more happy if, like the animals, we fulfilled our desires through instinct. Yet we're rational creatures. What else would reason be for then? And he says it's so that we can have a good will. And that should give you some idea of what having a good will means in Kantian moral philosophy, which he kind of explains here. Um, yeah, so what is a good will? That's obviously the question. And if you look at the last paragraph, you'll see something that will become extremely important in our take on Kantian moral philosophy. He gives an idea of what constitutes a good will. It's easy enough to say that, well, okay, what makes an act a good act is that it has a good will as its intention, but we have to be able to determine, what a good will is. We have to have some criterion for determining what actually constitutes a good will. It's in this last paragraph on page 9. Take a look at it. It gives you a kind of an answer.